can be added on at a second
Oh,
time,
yeah.
but within the 5 years. So this is the initial.
That's right.
I think it's like 60 by 90. It would be in there. Yeah.
We're going to be starting back up, folks.
That is a big building.
Counselor Varenkamp, you can close the doors too.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you can close the doors. They're gonna stay.
I'm trying to figure out where I am. I jostled my paperwork.
Slab
here.
on variance.
6B.
Where,
6B.
6B.
Yep.
Where the heck
Oh,
am
on
I?
that thing.
6? Where am I?
Oh, and your hands are done. Okay. I thought you were looking for the packet.
No, I'm trying to. I lost my spot. Okay. Yeah, just 6B. Can you show me where?
Right here.
Oh, thank you. Oh, I didn't have my glasses on. That might help. Okay. We're going to open the public hearing,
There's no public
right?
hearing.
No public hearing.
Technically, public comment
All
has
right.
already happened, but if there is someone that would like to speak, if the chair is open to it, we can do that.
Okay, all right. Are you just going to start then with the staff report?
Yeah, I can
All
do
right,
that.
please proceed.
Okay, so this is, again, not a public hearing, it's for a variance requested by Gideon and Heather Slava at 9925 Evert Road. The request is to allow for the expansion of a footprint of 2 non-conforming decks, to allow for an upgraded wraparound porch on their residential home. The original home on the property was built back in 1943, so long predates many of our standards in our code, and several aspects of it are considered legal nonconforming, including the setback of the house and the setback from Ebert, as well as the side setback to the northern property line. Additionally, the original home included a roughly 12 by 12 wooden deck along the eastern facade, and a second wooden deck on the south elevation of the house of a similar size. And both of these were placed within what is now the 50-foot setback from Ebert Road. As of today, the house is being rebuilt after a fire a few months ago. For the most part, the original footprint will remain. The applicants would like to add a wraparound deck that would go around the east, south, and west sides of the house. The city updated the nonconformity section of the code last year and clarified the definition for expansion, which would prohibit staff from administratively approving this specific request, even though the setback line from Ebert Road would actually be slightly reduced with the applicant's plans. So the image on the screen shows the red areas where the setback is not met, the 50-foot setback is not met, and the non-conforming deck, are kind of outlined where the red lines basically are around the non-conforming deck that would be approved today. I could administratively approve a porch, an upgrade from a deck to a porch because it's vertical, but with the new definition of expansion, which includes any increase and any structure that wasn't there before and any addition to a deck or a porch, I have spoken with a few people and they agree with me that I do not have the ability to administratively approve this. And again, this is the expansion and enlargement definition, which is causing that limitation. So any increase in a dimension or other size volume, any increase in the area of use, any placement of a structure or part thereof where none existed before, any addition of a site feature such as a deck and patio. So those are the specific words that I feel that I cannot approve this administratively. So the staff report contemplates the arguments for and against each standard of the variance. Going through this, I will be honest that I did not think I was going to recommend approval of the variance standards, but going through the process and evaluating everything, I found many more reasons to approve it than not. So I do find that there are practical difficulties in complying with the zoning ordinance, and the variance will allow for reasonable improvement of the site, including getting the deck and setback further from Ebert Road than it is today. So staff recommends approval of the variance. The Planning Commission should decide whether they believe the variance standards for practical difficulties are satisfied. If the commission believes there are difficulties, they can recommend draft resolution 2022A, which approves the variance. If they disagree, they should recommend approval of draft resolution 2022B, which denies the variance. And that is all I have for you.
Okay, so this is not a public hearing.
Nope, you could ask the applicant if you'd like to speak or.
Okay, is the applicant here? Oh, my IT guy, okay. Stand down up there and put your hand on that microphone.
Well, yeah, this is my wife, Heather.
That's, your child is an unfair advantage. Okay.
Do I need the mic or not? She tells me I don't need a mic to speak, so it just comes out loud, I guess.
Well, if you could, please stand behind there because we have people attending via Zoom, and without the microphone, they can't hear you.
Okay, so my name is Gideon. This is Heather.
Hello.
We live at 9925 Ebert Road here in Corcoran. And we had a house fire last year, and it had to do with winter storms that came through. It was actually the night that they were talking about 80-mile-an-hour winds and an ice storm. Just to give a little bit of a recap. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, the wind took a huge pine tree down. And went out across the road, snapped off 2 power poles, took the lines down, pulled the power line off the corner of our house and started the house on fire. That's how the fire, that's how the fire started. And so we've been rebuilding, since. And I guess at one point in time in the process, we were actually looking at building a brand new house, just completely going away from this. And the neighbor was going to sell us some land to be able to push things farther back. And there were some things in variances that were triggered to that made the process way too long, that it would have pushed things out. We didn't have the time, to do that, so we were forced to go back to Plan B, which is rebuild the old house. So we made up on, we changed a few things on it, and this porch is one of them that would accommodate what we're, trying to do, so. Good.
I'd like to say, we are a family of 6, and this house, prior to the fire, was 940 square feet. We've gained a little bit, we've changed the roof line, and so we have gained a little bit more, but we are looking for more outside space as well, and obviously to more beautify the neighborhood. I liked my little house, but it certainly wasn't for looks, and we're quite excited with what we've come up with, and we hope that it, obviously helps property values, ours, our neighbors, the cities, and so that was one reason. And we can show you, do you have the picture of what it would look like if we were not able to do the full deck and we kept just the one on the side?
I'm sorry, I did not include that in the slides. I would not.
Okay.
But yeah, the deck would be right here, and there would be stairs that, oops, sorry, let me get my laser pointer back. So the deck, so this is the current wooden deck right here.
Correct.
And then they are proposing stairs down. And then this is the other existing deck footprint, and then there'd be stairs this way. It does certainly have a more typical rural feel with the wraparound porch.
Right.
But with the things that were changed in the house, there's no longer a doorway going out even on that side.
Yeah,
So that deck that is currently
We have
there.
no access here anymore. That's been removed. The only access we have is here, and then now we have a sliding door here going into our screen porch. But if we were to kind of keep this and then have that, our contractor doesn't believe that would even, and I don't know if somebody, but that wouldn't even pass code, because you'd have stairs going down and then stairs going up, and they're almost like abutting right at each other. So we don't know if that, that was a concern for him as well, so. you know, again, we're just trying to kind of.
One of the changes that we made on the house in the rebuilding is the house had a half upstairs on it, and the roof line was going east and west, and now it's now going north and south. But was the half upstairs and was everything, pretty much the whole upstairs, everything had to be gutted. The roof had to be replaced, so we ended up, just because it was, you know, one of those half upstairs where, you know, the walls are moved in, was, you know, they just took everything off and placed a full, so it now has a full 24 by 24 usable space in the upstairs that it didn't have before.
Right.
So those are, you know, if you look at the pictures, those are the changes that were made, in the rebuild, trying to rebuild everything, so.
Okay. Sure. Does your child have anything to add?
She might,
She was 3 weeks old the morning of the fire.
Oh, boy.
So,
Okay.
we,
girl number 4.
Congratulations.
but we really tried to make it, so it just looks nice, obviously.
Sure.
Neighborhood too, we really kind of elevates Corcoran a little bit. It's one of those houses where a lot of people tell me, I know your house, it's right on the hill. When you take that curve, right, to get, I know exactly where you live, so I think it'll really.
It does kind of sit up, and, you know, the thing is like, there's not really anything, you know, we can't put a garage to the house. There's no option for doing that.
Sure.
You know, but the only thing we can do is put the wraparound, you know, porch on it. So,
Okay. Well, thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, let's discuss. Would you like to?
I am willing to go first.
Okay.
The only hang-up, when I went through the report, the only hang-up was what you had mentioned, was some of that definition or that language around expansion. And I feel like this is a situation, and we've encountered it a couple times before, where the language is restrictive, more restrictive than the intent. And here, I don't see that the intent is to be excessive in nature. I don't feel like the intent is to expand to an amount that in excess of what would be considered an expansion. So in that regard, I feel like the language is restrictive, but the intent, that they actually meet the intent. And so therefore, I would be in favor of passing the resolution.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that it's even, again, it's an older house, but that it was, it's actually further, I mean, it's more in compliance, even though it's a longer porch, it's actually more in compliance. So to me, this seems logical as well, so I would also be supportive.
Okay. Well, I have some comments. And I spoke with Natalie, and I came away from that conversation realizing that smart minds can agree to disagree. You explained to me that the definition of the word expansion changed the analysis. And the way that I see it, I do not think that the change to the definition means that a variance here is even required. The change to the definition is just that. It does not contain any prohibitions. It just says expansion now includes adding something where nothing existed before. That's what we have here, and I do not see that an administrative approval still would not apply. I believe that this should be approved administratively. Administrative approvals are in fact allowed because our city code says, quote, expansion of buildings found to be non-conforming only by reason of height, yard setback, which I think is important, or lot coverage area may be permitted provided the structural nonconformity is not increased and the expansion complies with the performance standards of the zoning ordinance. Now, staff, you take issue with the word increased, but the word increased is not defined by the new definition. The word is used in the definition, but it is not the term being defined. It's the word expansion that is defined. And it makes me think that the analysis is the same. The nonconformity was and still is the setback. That has not changed. The footprint of the porch has changed, but the nonconformity has not. Staff's example was the 15-foot setback. If there is a legal nonconformity with a structure at 15 feet, that can expand up and down as long as it doesn't cross that 15 feet. Think of it this way. You have a house that's higher than allowed, and the owner wants to put an addition on that's the same height. That's putting something where nothing existed once. It's an expansion. There, the nonconformity is the height. It's not increased. In that case, I would think it could be approved administratively. So no doubt, this meets the definition of an expansion. But expansion is actually okay and can be approved administratively so long as the nonconformity is not expanded. The nonconformity in this case is the setback. The nonconformity is not the square footage of the deck or the porch. Therefore, I think that this can and should be approved administratively as long as staff finds that there will be no external negative impact. So, I would like to hear, everyone else's thoughts on this. So I do think that this should be approved, but I'm hesitant to approve it as a variance. I think that the city should just approve it without.
It's interesting.
Yeah, I would just point to the wording that in the expansion, and you just said that it is an expansion, complies with the performance standards, and the expansion does not comply with the setbacks. And that is why the variance is needed. The
Okay.
expansion does not comply with the setback.
I
I see, the nonconformity is not increased, so I can get on board with that. But where I get lost is the expansion, and the expanded porch it is an expansion, complies with the performance standards of the zoning ordinance, and those include the setback, and it doesn't comply with the setback. So they would be able to expand their nonconforming structure to the west, no problem, but to wrap around the porch and add those areas is an expansion. So that is my piece with that, Mr. Chair. I don't believe I have the power to administratively approve this, and that's why the variance will be required for something like this.
Well, we're kind of far along in the process at this point, probably.
Well, I also feel like it's the end, how we get there is a matter maybe between us, but ultimately, the getting there is what's important, because these folks want to get back to their home, and so.
Well, I agree with you. I think that we're all coming to the same conclusion. My concern is this is not going to be the last time this comes up. Okay, so what I would like an opportunity to speak with the city attorney about this at a later date.
Well, we can always look at revising. We can put a work plan together as a commission for next year, and we could have this on there to make sure that something like this could be approved administratively going forward.
I don't know if we need a workshop. Let's just do it.
Oh,
Let's
well, no,
have
a
a
work
conversation with the
plan,
attorney.
So a work
and-
plan would be something like, so your guys' priorities, and they get forwarded to council, and the council can help us to get, so then staff resources can be put towards projects like this. So that'd be a zoning ordinance amendment that we could say, this is something we're interested in doing next year. So I think that's definitely a discussion we could do.
Add it to the list, basically.
Yeah, exactly. But with the planning commissions, it would probably be taken by city council pretty seriously. So that's something we could definitely start doing. We haven't really had a chance to do that with all the turnover that we've had, but we're starting to get a pretty good team. So I think that that's something we could do for 2023, definitely.
Awesome, and I think that you did a nice job on this. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion to approve resolution number 2022A.
Second?
I second.
Take a vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Where are you? Oh, there you are. Congratulations. Thank you.
The final decision will be at the council, so just on October 27th, so.
So you got it, 27.
Come back.
Yeah, yes.
You'll see me. Good to see you again.
Thank you, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you very much for your time, guys.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks for
Thanks
your-
for waiting, by the way.
And your microphone assistance. that was-
Oh, yeah, you can't leave. We need you for the rest of the night.
Now,
Where are you going?
Will be last.
Somebody just hold
Approval is contingent upon your continued service. Thank you, sir. You're welcome. And let's see. Okay. Okay. And C, THARP, that is a public hearing, correct?
Correct. This is a public-
Okay.
Go ahead and start with the staff report. So our next item is a request by Sean Tharp for a conditional use permit to allow an accessory structure footprint of up to 7,530 square feet with a sidewall height of 14 feet 8 inches to be used for personal storage of recreational vehicles and equipment needed to service a apple orchard he has on the lot, as well as just general maintenance. So it is about a 10-acre lot, or over 10-acre lot, so they are able to request to exceed the by right square foot footprint limit. And the applicant also requests flexibility to allow the building to be constructed in 2 phases over 5 years. So phase 1 would be 60 feet by 96 feet, plus approximately 330 square foot lean-to. That would also count towards the footprint. So that's a little over, probably more like 6,090 square feet total. And then phase 2 would be 60 by 120 as shown on his plans. So that would be 7,200 square feet plus the 330 square foot lean-to, which gets us to that number of 7,530. This is a rendering of the building. My understanding is this rendering reflects phase 2 after the building has been completely built out. Below is the approximate location. I definitely was probably a little liberal with it, but that is where it is located, between some 2 properties where the property has frontage on Duffney Drive. These are some revised site plans that the applicant submitted today to try to better show the phasing he would like. So on the left shows the 60 by 96 footprint, and there would be a driveway that goes to the south side of the building and also wraps around on the east to the north. He does have several overhead doors. My understanding is he has an RV, a boat, several other personal rec vehicles that he would be storing. And then the expansion for phase 2 is shown in that black box on the right. So it'd be building further south. I'll talk about this further. These plans, I did a measurement on Adobe, and it looks like they have more than enough room to comply with the side setback for both the drive aisle and the structure. I would like to see those clearly dimensioned and shown on a plan, so that I would like to add that as a condition of approval that was not in the draft resolution. So I talk about that a little bit further. So we have specific standards to exceed the sidewall height. We use our general standards for the expansion of the accessory structure footprint. Overall, staff found that all CUP standards seem to be met for both the sidewall height and the accessory structure footprint. Conditions of approval that I've identified is the property cannot be used for commercial purposes, and when I say property, I'm talking about the accessory structure. Cannot be used for commercial purposes unless a separate approval is requested and granted by the city. Revised plans must be submitted to satisfy the overhang minimum of 24 feet. That's fairly easy technicality they'll be able to fix. The certification of the applicant's wetland boundary must be complete before a building permit will be issued. And then the revised plans must be submitted that reflect removal of the second driveway access onto Duffney Circle that exists today. That second driveway will need to be closed and removed, and then that he will be allowed an additional driveway access on Duffney Drive. He meets all the requirements for that, and there are no traffic concerns to prevent that. Staff recommends adding the following conditions based on the plans received today. So as I said, I would like to have clear dimensions that reflect Phase 2 setbacks, and then the applicant must also submit revised building plans for the building permit that clearly show Phase 1. So like the floor plan and the elevations, those are all right now for Phase 2. And so it's not really something we have to add, it's just speaking with our construction services specialists. When it goes to building permit, they will only be able to approve Phase 1. So Phase 2, well, that's helpful for us to see what it would look like eventually. They need Phase 1, so we need clear plans for that. So no public comments were received prior to the public hearing. However, staff was made aware of some informal comments, and the Planning Commission could choose to discuss and address the following topics. The location of the structure and visibility from Duffney Drive, and if there's any conditions we can attach to address that. Rental of the property or portions thereof. For example, should we add a condition that it can't be rented out for storage to others specifically? Impacts to wetlands. The engineering memo did not identify any concerns other than because they're grading pretty much up to that wetland boundary, we need to certify that wetland boundary, and so that's already a condition of approval. And then the impact of a metal steel structure of this size in the context of the surrounding neighborhood. So do we want to look at the architectural elements? The commission should keep in mind that the building location and the materials comply with the code. However, landscaping and architecture is up for discussion, but if we're going to add conditions, we just need to tie it back to the impact of the granting the CUP. So recommendation is to open the public hearing. Staff recommends approval with the conditions discussed. If the commission disagrees or believe the plans need to be finalized further, they can recommend denial of the application. And that's all I have for you.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to open the public hearing to the public. Is there anyone here that would like to speak on this application?
And I should note the applicant is online with us.
Oh, okay. Is there anyone here in person that would like to comment on this application? No? Okay, please step up to the mic. Please state your name and address.
Mike Patterson. I am at 2400 Duffy Circle. I'm the property directly to the south of the building. What's the total height of the structure? 14-foot sidewalk. What is the total height of the structure?
That's a great question. I don't know if they mentioned that in the plan, so maybe the applicant would have that information on the top of his head. 1 second. Oh, public hearing. We can ask the applicant to address that after the public hearing.
Okay. We'll ask that question.
Because my home overlooks the property, and I'm going to be seeing the roof of the structure that large. I didn't realize it was going to be that large. It's going to be expanded.
Okay. Okay, thank you, sir. Would anyone else like to comment? No?
And then I do have someone raising their hand online.
Okay.
And then just to make sure the others are aware, please raise your hand either by pressing *9 on your phone or using the raise your hand function under the reactions tab to be able to participate in the public hearing. I see Sherry's hand up. Please go ahead and unmute yourself. Provide your full name and address. Thank you.
Good evening, this is Sherry Bergs and Michael Catlett. We are the owners at 9530 Duffney Drive.
Thank you.
We have concerns of the size. We actually, what you can't see is our driveway goes right down to where he's gonna build his building. So I think 7,200 square feet is a large building. Not only that, the height, we have concerns like Mike had pointed out. And we do have concerns from a wetland perspective, which you guys are taking care of from my understanding. So I guess that's our concern. Also 7,200 square feet seems like quite a bit. And it's not really gonna be, we live up on a hill and there's no plan to put trees in front or anything like that, so all we're gonna see is the building.
Yeah, right now our view from our front porch is just the wetlands and a lot of trees. But I would imagine in order to put this size of a building there, a lot of those trees where it's going to go are gonna have to come down. So all we will see is this building. And my other concern is how it doesn't really fit in with the aesthetic of this neighborhood. We bought this house about 2.5 years ago, and beautiful, beautiful area, a lot of beautiful homes, beautiful landscaping. The look of this building doesn't fit in with the look of all the other homes and buildings that are here. So those are our concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I don't see anyone else raising their hands at this time other than the applicant, but we could close the public hearing and ask him to speak, or we could have him speak now, up to you.
Okay, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Can I have a second? Or, I'm sorry, do you have,
Well, I was just going to say that to be consistent, it might be best to allow him to speak during the public hearing, to be
Oh,
consistent with our
yeah.
other agenda
Okay.
items this evening.
That's not generally how we recommend
Oh.
it to applicants.
Oh,
and
okay.
so I had a brief discussion.
Okay.
Just to make it clear going forward, but we could do that tonight if you'd like. Again, it's up to the chair.
No, if that is not typically how we do it, then I think we should proceed with how we typically do it.
And I will second closing.
okay, we have a second. Can I get a vote on closing the public hearing? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay,
Sean, go ahead and unmute yourself if you'd like to address the commission, and maybe answer the question about how tall the actual roof line will be of the building. 1 second, I don't know if you're having trouble. Hearing. Sean, if you're talking, I can't hear you. Can you unmute yourself? I don't know. I apologize. He's not, I can't unmute him directly. I've asked him to unmute. So I don't know if he's running into technical difficulties. I can try to see if I can pull up the plans that might show the roof line.
Well, I was just looking at that too in here, and now I'm not as well versed in reading plans as you are.
Yeah, no.
But I can't, nothing jumps out at me.
Does it have a roof pitch?
No, it's got,
Yeah, it measures the sidewall
Oh,
height.
412,
412.
yeah.
412.
How old is the building?
60 is the width, 90 is the initial length.
Yeah, in accessory structures, we have a sidewall height as the limitation. So
Okay.
that's what's dimensioned on my plan. I'm
Okay.
trying to see if there's something else, maybe in some of the other plans that he submitted, but the elevation seemed to only dimension the sidewall height. That's all I have.
Right, there is
And then the
like,
pitch.
yeah, and the pitch.
Yeah.
And I think that's it.
But I don't
not
have
the total
I don't
height.
know what
Yep.
the total, we could certainly ask for that to be addressed, and I can follow up with the neighbor that made his comments, but I don't have anything tonight that has that definitively. Oh, Sean is joining us again. Oh, he
Maybe
popped back
20
off.
feet-ish.
These don't have a clear scale.
Well, you know, but you can do it the old-fashioned way. And
Oh.
I'm
With a
guessing
piece of paper.
26 feet.
Okay.
26
okay. Thank you, Kendra.
Very technical.
High tech over here,
Roughly
guys.
26 feet, I guess.
We spare no expense.
Thank you.
can we proceed with
Oh, definitely.
deliberations?
Go ahead. I don't know what's happened to the applicant. so I
Okay.
apologize.
Who would like to take this first? No?
I didn't have any real strong opinions on it. I mean, I do find that, you know, that is an interesting point from the neighbor's perspective, but, you know, it's part of their lot. and they're allowed a second driveway, so I don't know that that's they could always, they could put one that was within the accessory structures there. It's more about this larger size one, I think, is the question. So I didn't have any real strong opinions. I like the idea of restricting from a commercial perspective, so I support that as well.
Okay.
To be fair, if there were to be any renting of the space, that should technically be an application for like an interim use permit,
So.
or no?
Commissioner Drummond, renting the single-family home, there's no problem with that. And when the rental question got brought up, it was not clear to me what they meant by renting out the property, whether they meant the house or if they were renting the structure.
Sure.
I would say renting the structure out for storage to other people that don't live or have a interest in the property would definitely be a commercial use. Our home occupation licenses have not been used to approve that type of use, to my understanding. So I don't believe it's something they could do. Our storage units are all located in industrial
Sure.
districts. So I would say that would not be appropriate, and we could make a condition so that's very specific, that it can't be rented out commercially.
Okay, and then so I guess my only other question perhaps for staff is that, is there similar to when we have to, an applicant, like on the last variance, they meet certain standards. In this case, for something that's above and beyond the granted within it's 3,969 square feet, that if they were making it 3,969 square feet, it wouldn't be here, right? So are there requirements that we can use to guide us in that process, or is it just?
I'm sorry, I don't quite understand.
To determine if a variance in terms of approving like almost double the size or square footage, right? When you consider the lean-to, we're at 7,500 square feet. And that's just up to the discretion in terms of, will it be in fitting with the neighborhood? Those are the sorts of criteria that you would like us to look at. Does it meet the code? Is it in fitting with the area? Those are the sorts of things that we're using to guide our decision.
Correct,
Okay.
yes. So you can certainly tie so if you feel that the structure view from the street has a great impact, a mitigating thing that you could theoretically propose is more landscaping. You could theoretically propose different architectural materials to address that, so it's a conditional use. So sometimes additional conditions are attached, but if it meets the standards, you should approve it.
So I guess, I do feel like it seems quite large. So the consideration giving to the additional landscaping, if that is something ordinarily we wouldn't necessarily require for somebody putting up an accessory structure, but this is the size arguably of a very large home. And so in that regard, as I was reading through it and trying to determine, I don't often like to necessarily create more obstacles for homeowners who just want to use their homes. But in this situation, considering that if it is approved, the applicant is receiving nearly twice as much square footage in an accessory structure, I do feel like it would be fair for us to ask for some landscaping requirements, especially in regard to where it borders Duffney Drive, and then potentially also, maybe to the neighboring property. So those were the things that I was given, that I was considering. If you have comments to add, it'd be great.
Thank you. I think that this application should be approved with the conditions outlined in the resolution. I do have one issue, and that is, it's open for 5 years, and half a decade is an awfully long time. And I think that we should grant this with a modification that the time limit is 2 years. And prior to the expiration of that second year, the applicant may apply for one and only one additional year.
Thank you, Chair, for bringing that up. I did actually have, I understand the applicant's reasoning for that, but in terms of the way that the process would happen, if that extension or that open allowance is there, is that just something where it's kept in city records, and then when the application, or the building permit is requested for phase one, then it's approved, and then regardless, with, assuming no changes have been made, then they just are given a second, approval of the secondary permit?
Yeah, so a building this size is going to trigger red flags when our construction service specialist is looking at it. So he would have to go back to the conditional use permit to see
Okay.
what was approved. So conditional use permit records are permanent. They need to be kept on file forever. Even if the property were to disappear, I believe the statute still requires us to keep everything. So that would be something that we would refer to. And I tried to outline it. It is unusual. We don't usually see a phasing approach to an accessory structure. But I couldn't find anything that says he couldn't request it. So here we are.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, for what's 24 feet, it's an extra 24 feet.
Yeah, I know he's running into a lot of difficulties securing materials and
Yeah.
things like that right now. So.
And then it is with the condition that nothing has changed from the original approval of this, the plan. So if something changes, it is not an automatic approval of that expansion, or second phase.
What do you mean by something change? Like he wants to,
In terms of dimensions, or,
so if he wants something bigger for phase two, he
Sure.
will have to come right back for a comprehensive plan amendment.
Okay.
We will have to finalize the plans and that will be what so that's, the plans I have reflecting phase two, that's what can be built for
Okay.
phase two. And if he wants to change that, we'll have to do a comprehensive plan.
okay. And then, does staff have any insight as to the recommendation from Chair Lanterman in terms of it changing the process at all to just reduce the time from 5 years to 2?
That is certainly up for
An option.
Yeah, we can ask, he's raising his hand again, so I think he's trying to speak. We could certainly ask him why he believes 5 years is what he needs. Again, I do know he's running into significant problems with securing materials, and trying to, I think that's it. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, I'm sorry, I didn't have my, on my iPhone, it didn't have access, Zoom didn't have access to my microphone, so it took me a little bit to figure that out. I apologize. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
As far as the size, I just wanted to have access so that the 14 foot is so I could get a motorhome or an RV. I'm now getting into my retirement phase, and I've got a pontoon, I've got a fishing boat. I'd like to store those inside, and want to be able to drive in a motorhome, and you really need a 14-foot sidewalls in order to get a motorhome in there, and that's why the height is that size. I missed a few minutes of your discussion. As far as the screening, I'm kind of bound by the high power lines to the north, and I don't know if you discussed that, and I apologize if you did. You build anything or put anything on the north side of the building, and the power line companies will come in and they rip it all out, or cut it down. So about the only thing, and I understand, those are some of the reasons, and I did try to make it initially, Natalie, and you can attest to this, tried to make it so that the back of the building went, the roof line went north-south, so that it didn't appear, kind of like deceptively, like didn't look as big as it actually was. I really tried to work with, but due to the wetland, the wetland studies that I've had done, of which now the final report should be done and should be to Natalie here very, very soon. Spent thousands of dollars to make sure I could, stay out of the wetlands and stay out of the power line easements. And I'm just trying to, just trying to make a building that I can use for my personal enjoyment. And, I'm hoping to put a few more apple trees in the back and, get my John Deere tractor back home and get my classic cars back into my own garages where I like them. So that's my hopes for this project.
Thank you, Sean. Did you want to speak to your request for a 5-year time period?
It was just, the only, well, in an ideal world, I would have gone, you know, my wife didn't really want me to build one this big anyways to begin with, and, you know, with the rising prices of lumber costs going through the roof, and I know they've come down a little bit, but, you know, I had to scale back the size of it so that I could, you know, keep my wife happy, and still meet my, you know, my hopes for this building. You know, am I going to do the expansion in 2 years, 5 years? There's a lot of, you know, process in which, you know, thousands of dollars to have, because it was the way it was explained to me is the wetland delineation lines have to be all redone again. And so not only did I have to pay another $2,000 to the wetland delineator, another $2,200 to the city to validate those delineations, and then pay another, you know, so it's another $10,000 process just to get a small expansion. So I don't know, I was just simply asking the question, you know, my wife's not even on board with expanding it, so will it ever happen? I just thought, you know, if we could get an approval for it, and if I ever did decide to do it, I had the option within the five-year time frame. That's what we discussed, you know, and so I don't know. Did you have other questions?
No, I appreciate it. I'll let you know if there's some. Oh, was 26 feet to the roof line sounding right for the building height of the structure? Did that?
I thought the sidewall height,
Correct.
and maybe I'm incorrect.
No,
It's
you're
Morton
correct.
Construction is building the building. Morton Construction is building the building, and my understanding is the sidewall height is at 14. If it's showing 14.8, it probably is. As far as we did not, as to make so that the roof not go up any higher, we're doing, I believe, a 412 pitch roof, which is pretty standard for I don't think I'm at a 512. I think I'm at a 412 pitch roof. I tried to make the building look attractive so that I didn't have an eyesore. I tried to do. I've had many revisions with Morton, and you know, as I said originally, we were trying to do it north-south facing and then put some solar on it. But then to do it north-south facing and to put solar on the roof of the building, then the $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 in additional supports for beefing up the trusses, to putting plywood down to support the weight of the solar panels, and then to you know, to have the wind and snow load ratings. It was just like, oh my goodness, that's just not gonna, you know. So this is where we ended up. I tried to work with the city as best as I could to make sure I met all your setbacks from the wetland, from the, you know.
Oh, he dropped off.
Okay.
I will add, because you had asked about staff insight on the request. I will say that our wetland delineations and our property surveys are good for 5 years.
Okay.
So it does align with that.
Okay.
Well, I'm going to make a motion to recommend approval with conditions. The conditions being those, Commissioner Brumman, did you have conditions that you wanted to see on this with respect to landscaping, or did I misunderstand?
Well, my request particularly was just along Duffney Drive, and I think one, because of the size of the structure being as large as it is, and then I think it's a way to be neighborly, since that was some of the neighbor concerns. I never felt like it needed to be done along the north side of the structure. So in particular, I think the Duffney Drive is where, and then, yeah,
Okay, so what are you recommending? Trees? or-
What I heard from the neighbor who made comments during the public comment time was just that everything else in the neighborhood, which I've been into this neighborhood, everything is very nicely landscaped. And so I think it doesn't need to be initially. I guess overall, just having a finished shrubs, I don't know, ask your neighbor what they, what they would really feel good about having. So I don't necessarily have a specific set of requirements in terms of number of trees. So I don't know how specific you need me to get. I think being broad and just saying kind of finished landscaping in that front area along the Duffney Drive side would be suffice.
Yeah, the staff can work with the applicant with that, yes.
Okay, well, with that, I'll make a motion to recommend approval with the conditions of finished landscaping and my condition of 2 years, and prior to the expiration of that second year, the applicant may apply for only one-year extension. Can I get a second?
I know there's a motion on the floor, and so we're not supposed to discuss, but would you deviate for a moment, Chair, and allow me to ask you a question?
Please.
Staff gave their, the understanding of why like a 5-year would line up with that wetland delineation. Can you just give a little bit of insight into why you're requesting the 2-year?
Because 5 years is an awful long time. And I think if you're gonna do it, do it. And if you need more than 2 years, maybe your application was a little premature. So I think that 2 years is adequate. I'm recommending giving the applicant an opportunity to extend 1 more year. And if this still isn't done after year 3, I think he made a mistake and probably should start over.
Thank you. Is it possible for me to ask staff one follow-up question? Of
course,
before we?
please do.
Okay, my follow-up question would be if those wetland delineations still stand, and for some reason the resolution is passed with the 2-year limitation and then the 1-year extension, if the applicant decides in year 4 that that's the point in time and they come before commission at that point in time asking for a variance, do they have to go through the whole process of a wetland delineation again?
Commissioner Bremen, so they would ask for a conditional use permit just so that.
Sorry, thank you.
There's no confusion with that.
yeah.
It's definitely different standards. But so if the city were to approve 2 years with a 1-year extension and he comes back at year 4, then yes, we would have to go through the public hearing and final approval, but the wetland delineation would be good for 5 years.
So that everything that he has invested into this project at this point would still be good? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't putting him in a spot.
But he would still have to pay like the fees and the escrow.
For the app.
And some of the costs he quoted were escrow deposits that
Sure.
I'm doing my best to be very wise with my time spent on this application to try to get him something back. So hopefully it won't be $10,000 worth of city fees when we're all said and done. But there is escrow deposits required for that wetland delineation with the city and then the CUP. So again, we do our due diligence to try to get a refund. And I think with this somewhat simple case, he'll be pleasantly surprised to see some of that return, so.
Oh, Landerman, you put me in a spot.
Can I get a second?
Are you leaning toward, I don't have a strong opinion on that, 2 to 1. And I mean, obviously, he's got his own personal stuff to navigate there with that. So I know you put the motion out there.
Do we have a second?
That's what we're.
You and I are, it probably doesn't matter. I mean, I'm kind of at the point where maybe it doesn't matter. He basically has 3 years instead of 5 years, in a sense.
Well, 3 years instead of 6, because it would have been 5 years with the ability to do a one-time extension for 1 year.
Oh, I understand. Okay.
Which under normal circumstances, I do empathize with the fact that supplies really are difficult to get. And so that is where I'm torn. I understand that you would like to, under normal circumstances, it is a really long time. So I can't, is there a friendly option under this sign? But
With what? Hey, I'm friendly.
No, but the other time when we got to say like, hey, I would second, but with a friendly to leave it at 5.
Oh,
You'd usually second it and then make an amendment.
Okay.
So, well,
Otherwise it dies for lack
one,
of a second.
I'll withdraw my motion, and what do you propose? See, that's friendly.
That is very.
I was not implying you weren't friendly, but I would propose a passing of the resolution with the request for some finished landscaping along Duffney Drive. And I guess, I mean, if you want to split the difference, maybe that feels, because I understand your concern. So then I would say, let's give the applicant 3 years with an option of extending one time. So that we are seeing, I personally do not feel like there's an issue with the 5, but if it's not something that we typically do, I appreciate your concern and would like to split the difference.
Okay, so if I understand you, what you're saying is approve with the conditions of finished landscaping and 3 years before the expiration of that 3-year period, the applicant may apply for one and only one-year extension.
Yes, that would be correct.
And is that your motion?
Yes, with the finished landscaping only being required on that Duffney Drive.
I will second that.
It's very cool.
Can I get a vote? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? There you go. All right, we're moving right along here.
Moving right along.
Moving right along. Oh, okay. 6D. Okay, so where am I here? We have a staff report, correct? Okay.
Chair, Commissioners, this is the preliminary plat site plan and variance for a new water tower site at 19951 Oswald Road. This is currently the lot where Hope Church resides, north of County Road 30 and west of County Road 116. Next slide. The City of Corcoran is the applicant, along with the landowner as part of the application, and they're requesting the approval to allow a new water tower. The property is guided, public, semi-public, and zoned public institutional, which is what all of our places of worship in the city are zoned and guided. There are no significant natural features on the site identified in the comprehensive plan. So this is the land use map. It's very hard to see my little red stars at this scale, but there's the site on the north side of town. This is in the Northeast District, just direct, like I said, directly west of 116 and north of County Road 30. Next slide. The bulk of the property will be retained by Hope Ministries. Lot 1 will be 28.93 acres, and Lot 2, which the city would buy, thank you Natalie, right there, is 1.2 acres. That would be the water tower site. The city is requesting a variance from the 10-acre I-1 standard, which also has implications for the essential services, and I'll discuss the variance later in the report.
I thought that was a 15-acre.
It is. It's I-1 is 10. I was going to go into that.
Okay.
But
You
I-1
gotta
is a
watch
10.
these people.
Yeah.
Don't let them sneak anything by you.
I do expand on that a bit. The I-1 district typically has a 10-acre standard. Park dedication is not required because there's an existing use on Lot 1, and when you plat, if there's an existing parcel, you do not, and Lot 2 is a public use, which does not pay park dedication. City use, which does not pay park dedication. Next slide. The water tower is defined as an essential service, which is allowed in all districts, subject to a number of standards. The plans are for a 750,000 gallon water tower. Natalie, if you can kind of point to the water tower, it is a little hard to see, but it's that circle there. It is 156 feet high. At the top, the bulb of the tower is 62 feet in diameter. The council, who's been working with the city engineer on this design, is also going to be considering a $1 million gallon option, which the site plan does not change, so the approval would be for either the 750 or 1 million. Next slide. The landscaping, which was in your packet, it's not very readable on this screen, but the landscaping does comply with both the zoning ordinance standard zoning ordinance standards and the Northeast District standards. In this case, a 6-foot screening fence is provided to screen the 3-foot-high transformer. The water tower colors and logo, this is the design of the tower, but the color, the logo, or whatever imaging goes on there will be approved at a later date by the council. Next slide. So there are 3 variances requested. The first is to allow a 1.2 acre lot in the PI district. And so the PI district does have a 10-acre minimum lot size. But because it's an essential service, the essential services ordinance requires that essential services be on a 1-acre lot in agricultural and residential districts, but in all other districts needs to be 1.5 times the minimum lot size of that district. And so in this case, in the PI district, it's a 15-acre minimum lot size. If this were zoned residential, again, it would be a 1 acre, or the mixed use that's directly to the south. But because it's PI, it is a 15-acre minimum lot size for essential services. The property could be rezoned to residential as an alternative. If you find that the variance standards are not met for the minimum lot size, the alternative would be to rezone the lot that the water tower is on, re-guide and rezone it from public institutional to residential, and then it would comply. The second variance is to allow an overhead door visible from County Road 30. Next on your agenda is some consideration for some changes to that. But right now it would be visible. It is separated from 30 by a developable parcel and another road right-of-way. And so once those are developed, it would no longer be visible, but at the time of construction, it would be. So a variance is required. In the staff report, I did provide findings of fact for approval, and findings, if you find the variance standards are not met, some of those findings, and the result would be to turn the tower and orient the overhead door towards the church. It cannot go to the east or to the west because there's residential property there, so it could go north to the church. The third variance is for a drive aisle setback. All parking and drive aisles must be 50 feet from the front line in the public institutional district. The parking does comply, but the drive aisle, which is really a fire lane hammerhead turnaround, does not comply. It is a 37-foot setback where 50 feet is required. Again, I provided some findings. If you find that it's not met, the end result would be to push that tower closer to the church. Next slide. So this is a public hearing. The applicant, our city engineer and the landowner are both here. There are 2 actions tonight to review the preliminary plat and the second resolution approving or denying the site plan and 1 or more of the variances.
Could I ask you a quick clarification question, please?
Yes.
And maybe I misunderstood earlier tonight, but when we heard the proposal for the Corcoran Farms project, I thought I heard talk about a piece of land that was going to go toward a water tower. Did I?
A well.
Oh, a well. Water's water, right? Okay. I'm sorry, thank you. With that, I will open the public hearing. We'll take in-person comments first. Is there anyone present that would like to speak on this topic? Yeah, please. And please state your name and address.
Working?
Is it working?
I don't know, is it green or no?
Sometimes
I think
you
it
have
got
to hold it a couple
turned
seconds.
off because of the feedback it was giving.
Didn't the city just buy this system?
It's on now, I
I
can't.
want a
feedback.
refund.
It's working.
It's on.
There you go.
My name is Peter Smeal. I live at 20041 Hunters Ridge. So I live in the development right next to the church. And so, I guess my questions are related to kind of bigger picture about city planning and placement, and that this seems, again, kind of far down the road, that that this is a location. I question that it's an attractive situation on a very, very busy, intersection to put a water tower. My understanding is it was planned to be farther east and was moved for other reasons that I don't know. And obviously, as a homeowner, I'm concerned about property values. Being able to see a 156-foot tower out in my backyard, it's obviously, I don't think anybody wants to sign up here to live next to a water tower, so, thank you.
Thanks for coming out. Anyone else? Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
John Corcoran, on behalf of my mother's farm, which is directly west of this property, sixth-generation farm. Our concerns is this property's being developed. We heard, it's water tower and assisted living and all this stuff. What are we doing with the water? Because right now, everything on that farm, where half of that farm drains to the west, which ends up on our property. So is there going to be city sewer, curb gutter to hold the water from this property on their property and not on ours? Because our plans is to continue farming.
Would you like to respond to that, or do we have a response? You want to wait till the end?
Yeah, we usually
Okay.
do the public hearing and then staff can respond to all questions.
Sure, okay.
And I guess what happened.
We'll get an answer for you.
The same thing as what he mentioned is the water tower was proposed to be off of Stieg Road, and as that development got built, that contractor made the homeowners sign paperwork stating that there is going to be a water tower in the neighborhood. And then we heard that all of a sudden, these neighbors got together, came back to the city and said, hey, we don't want this water tower in our neighborhood. Well, my mom will look right out her front door at the water tower. And do you want a water tower in your front yard as you look out, or any of you guys? Worry about that, because I know she doesn't. So that's all I got to say.
All right, thank you for coming out. Does anyone else have any comments? The applicant, I'm sorry, you want to comment?
I'm Brian Lothar. I pastor Hope Community Church, which is the site for the water tower. And we've been working with the city for many years to try and bring city services here to the city. We have an appropriate spot for the water tower to go on the western side of our property. I understand that nobody probably ever wants a water tower in their backyard. I think the future would indicate that not only is there a cell tower on the Cothradi's property, which is higher than any other structure in the area, but this water tower will obviously make provision for development not only to the west of us, but to the south and this whole intersection. And so what is proposed to be developed on the site is commercial to the south of the water tower and seniors housing to the east of it, and possibly 1,000 feet away from the water tower would be to the north. But the residents of the north are protected by very old growth tree lines that are over 80 feet tall. And most of those homes abut right up to the tree lines, and the water tower will not be visible for them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to comment on this application? No? Yes, sir?
I would just like to comment, the biggest thing.
Could you please stand up to the microphone? We have people online.
Okay, the biggest concern we have is the water. Because back when that farm was originally sold, where the houses are, where he lives, we still got to stay away from the property line because it's always wet, from the water draining from that housing development onto our property. You know, and then, like where the cemetery went in for the church, there's supposed to be a drainage easement along there and screening at the end of it. Well, none of that's been done. I mean, if the water comes off that cemetery, it's right onto our property. There's no swale. A swale is a swale. I mean, it's something that should be 1.5 feet, 2 feet deep, diverted right down the property line. Well, their bank comes right down to the property line. So what happens? It comes right on ours. And the city had never been back out there to address it or, you know, inspect it to make sure it's done properly. So we just want to make sure the water stays, you know, on their side, and we really don't have anything against, you know, developing, but we want to continue farming and not lose, you know, acreage along the property lines. That's our biggest concern. And as, like I say, as Brian develops this, you know, we're all for it, you know, I'm a builder myself, so I get it, but let's just make sure it's done right. And for Kyer, you know, are we gonna bring sewer to the project, you know, hopefully someday? You know, and contain that water, or get rid of, you know, stormwater, curb and gutter? You know, right now it isn't. So it's a big concern, you know, for us.
Sure. Okay, thank you, sir. Pastor?
I appreciate, you know, your comments about the water, the drain off right now that seems to come not only from the cemetery, but also the fields. I've already got a call into Glenn, and I've talked with him a couple of times. Glenn is one of Marlis's sons. And we have a meeting, I proposed a meeting with Glenn so that we can look at the overall grading plans for putting the water tower in and do some finishing grading on our cemetery so that no water actually does run to the Cothrati property. And we're committed to doing that. And we've had a great relationship with the Cothratis. They actually lease all of our agricultural fields, and you know, they are very good neighbors, and there's no reason why that amenability can't continue into the future. But I'm committed to making sure that the grading that would need to be done on this site will take into consideration the Cothrati property as well.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to comment? Anyone online?
Members of the public online, if you'd like to participate in the public hearing, please raise your hand now. It looks like you're all on either a computer or mobile device, so that would be through the raise your hand function under the reactions menu. And at this time, there is no hands raised, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, and we'll open up discussion.
Before we get into our comments, would staff be able to
thank you.
respond to the two questions that were proposed?
Sure, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. First, I just want to clarify that the application in front of you tonight is just for the water tower. Certainly there is future plans for more development, but right now it's just the water tower. And as part of the water tower site, it is not required to do a stormwater treatment pond, but we do have a bioretention swale that is planned as part of this project. I think that was one of the questions regarding grading. So there's a minimal amount of grading, but there is a bioretention pond planned as part of this site. When the rest of the development comes forward, though, obviously there's a much larger drainage analysis. They will need to comply with state and local regulations, and the city engineer will review that when that comes in. I think the second question was about why the water tower site was moved. Was there a
From where it
question?
was originally east, yeah.
Yeah, I can't answer that question. I don't know. I wasn't part of those conversations.
Oh, okay, so you can't answer because you don't know?
Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't at those council meetings, but I think
Okay.
Steve, our engineer that's been the project manager for this, was at the council meeting and may have answers, or our council liaison. I'm not sure how this site was selected.
Bueller?
If you'd like, I can shed
Please.
some light.
Yes, please.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I seldom am right. There is an identified water tower site in the Amberley Bellwether neighborhood. There is, I believe it's about 7 acres
Still exists.
that is part of city property now, and that'll be well number 2 or well number 1. Well number 2 will be at the water treatment site. But in my mind as a council member, I do not want to lose that realization that there could be a water tower there too. The folks in the neighborhood, absolutely, as Mr. Cawthordy spoke, there was documents that were out there that they all signed, and they understood that that was a possible water tower site. Okay? It came to the council. I did not, I don't remember how I voted, but I did not like moving it because that land was identified, the water tower was there. It is, a water tower in this general area is more specific to the entire northeast area, which we've had our design plan and all those things. So the council as a whole decided to look for another location for a possible water tower and see what we could do. And Hope Church came in with this site, being in an area where they've got a church right there, granite farmland to the east, or excuse me, to the west, farmland to the south, and those kind of things. And we agreed that this would be another alternate site for that water tower without giving up those 7 acres still in the Amberley Bellwether area. But that will be a site of a second well. Your comments about a well in the Corcoran Farms deal, that would be a third well or another well that's needed to obviously pump enough water as this city grows over many, many years. Did I answer it okay?
I think so. If I could just clarify, so it was originally proposed, the water tower was originally proposed on the 7 acres. City council decided we may want to keep this 7 acres for
We
a
will
well,
keep that 7
just in
acres.
case,
The well is gonna be there. Those 7 acres are the city.
for the well.
Land. I don't think it's an open space. I don't think it's a park.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
But again, in the grand scheme of, we need elevation for our first well, or our first tower. If you know of I always called it an underground water tower up on Bass Lake Road, across from the cemetery, there's a 1 million gallon, it's actually over 1 million gallon water reservoir there, and that serves lower lying land. But again, in Maple Grove, there's many water towers with that natural elevation and gravity feed to give us 60 to 80 pounds per square inch to residential faucets in our city. So that's the reason for an elevated water tower. If we did put a water tower there, one of the options we were talking about was putting a ground tower, which I believe the elevation was about 40 feet tall, but then we'd have to pay money to pressurize our system if we didn't have a water tower. How am I doing? Have I got it? Okay. Whew. It's not the first time I did this.
I'm impressed, man.
Being part of what I did in the neighboring city and then coming here, I retained some. But in a nutshell, that land is still there, and if we need another water reservoir and stuff, I'll be the first one insisting that we've got 7 acres, we can put something there.
Okay.
So, but a lot of our residents seem to forget some of the documents they may or may not sign, or they may or may not read, and that was the troubles that we had when it came to the council, that location and stuff. The council as a whole decided to, let's look for another location. And again, I've already spoke to it, the Hope Church, the Luther group, whatever we call them and such, came up with this 1.2 acre parcel, and it's a good fit.
Okay.
It's very hard for the neighbors as far as farmland and stuff, and I respect the Cothraddies a lot, but I think we can come up with something that'll work, other than we'll be looking at a 165-foot water tower.
Sure. Thank you for your comments.
You bet. Thanks for letting me
I need to
shed some
close the public hearing, correct? Or did I do that
we did.
already?
We did that.
Okay, I'm trying to stay on track
We were
here.
on staff questions.
Okay, all right. Discussion?
Well, the last question had been about curb and gutter. And so I believe when I look at, this is not a slide that was in the staff report, but if you, in our packet, there did contain sort of a markup showing the extension of that cul-de-sac. And it does appear that around the area that is going to be the Bitmus Drive, that there is curb and gutter. Am I correct in saying that? Bituminous, sorry, I pronounced that
No, you're
incorrectly.
good. So Steve Haglund, I'm the engineer on the project, so, yeah, per our code, we have to have concrete curb and gutter around the bituminous drive in the parking lot, so within this improvement, it'll have it. Now, some of it'll be flat, we'll still convey water in the same way it is going, so we'll have it there, but generally the water still can go west onto the Cothradi property as it goes today. As we talked about, per the Northeast design standards, there is a biofiltration basin, so kind of a small rain garden kind of pond to help treat some of that runoff before it goes to that, from the bituminous to that pond, and then it continues west.
Okay. Thank you. That was, and does that answer your question earlier about curb and gutter, sir?
Well, I mean, as the whole thing gets
Yeah.
developed, I mean, pro-development, don't get me wrong there, but we just want to make sure that, it's contained, that we don't get the brunt of it, because you look at it from the church, I mean, everything's tipped, our way.
So to Kendra's comment before, as this thing, we're talking about the one
Yep.
piece here, as this thing comes in with the larger development, they'll go through the entire stormwater master
Okay.
plan that gets reviewed by the city, same as any other development, that ensures that, there's no negative stormwater effects offsite. So we look at all those things, both through the city, through the watershed, make sure they're complying with all those standards. So that's really a part of, yes, it's done here, but it's really a part of that larger master development that comes later. This is really just carving out that one piece.
Okay, thank you. Discussion?
I didn't have much on this. I mean, it seems, hard to pick one up place for something like this. It seems like it's getting close to their property, but it just seems like it's kind of leads to the edge of our northeast district. It seems, I always enjoy driving into towns and seeing a water. It just seems like then we're maybe a little bit more of a city. I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing. My wife and we saw it and we're like, oh, wow, it's like a real city. And that seems silly maybe, but it's pretty close. I live real close to where these guys are, just on Kane Road, but, it just seems logical all in all. But I didn't have anything on it.
I didn't have any concern. I felt like to have to reorient the building either closer to the church or to turn it, considering that a larger development area would come in, felt like it wasn't necessarily the best. And so I felt like what we were given was the best, and then that was why there were requests in particular for those two variances. So I was in support of those two variances. And then the third as well, which seems to fit, that an essential service would be on just a 1 acre plot of land and not necessarily needing to be in a larger area. So in regard to all of the variances, I didn't see an issue with them and would be in support of passing the resolution. My daughters, their only request, so I know that this is going to be determined at another time, but they really want a mural of running horses on the City of Corcoran water tower. So I told them it's a little too late for them to be up, but.
Sounds like a good competition.
Running horses, silo, we've got all kinds of suggestions.
So there are 3 variances associated with the application. We have lot size, overhead door, and a drive lane setback. Now, for the lot size variance, the code would require 15 acres. This is about 1.5 acres. Now, unfortunately, the property is surrounded by a church and a cemetery. The city notes that it could simply rezone the property instead to get around this if it wanted. I would vote to recommend approval because these conditions were not created by the landowner and are unique to this parcel. Second, it is amusing to me that the overhead door, which we will deal with in the next agenda item, is back yet again. I will reserve my commentary for that time, but I think that this can be approved. And for the drive lane, I think that this can be approved. So with that, I would make a motion to approve, let's see, what's the right language here? I make a motion to approve the draft resolution approving the preliminary plat, final plat, site plan, and variance for the Corcoran Water Tower at 19951 Oswald Farm Road. Can I get a second?
I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And do we have a different microphone,
I don't
or
know if we do, I'm
It's
not aware of it.
very
I will go
difficult?
ahead and turn it off so we can reopen it for the public hearing. Just on that.
Oh, yeah, you have one more public hearing. She was going to leave it on for the final public hearing.
Oh, yeah.
I think we can turn it off, and if someone wants to speak, we'll just turn it back on. Okay. Would you like me to start the presentation, or you want me to hold on?
Sure,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, so our last item tonight, thank you for bearing with us, Commissioners, we're almost done, is one last public hearing for a zoning ordinance amendment to the Northeast District Plan and Design Guidelines. So city staff recommends a zoning ordinance amendment to the Northeast District Plan to address variances that have come up in processing our plans for the water treatment plant and water tower. We realize that especially smaller properties are going to have some restrictions that might not make sense in all cases, as well as concerns about requiring screening in excess of the height of equipment. So we'll go into, the first one is the loading docks and overhead doors, as alluded to by our chair. Right now, they cannot be visible from county roads or residential property at all. The proposed change would be that loading docks or overhead doors every effort should be to orient them away from county roads or residential property whenever reasonable. And we, as the city, would be able to determine what is reasonable. If it's found not to be reasonable and the loading docks or overhead doors are visible, then our 80% opacity year-round screening rule elsewhere in the code would apply. The next amendment is for the utility service structures. Screening right now has to be done with a fence or wall at least 6 feet in height, and chain link fence with slats shall not be accepted as screening. While I think there will be instances where we want this type of screening, when something is only 3 feet of height, this seems very excessive and will be burdensome to applicants. So, staff is proposing that we rewrite this so that ground-mounted mechanical equipment can use a combination of landscaping, privacy fence, or wall at the same height as the equipment it is screening, or 6 feet tall, whichever is less. The idea is we can't, if it's something like right hennepin, which is probably where the strict language came from in the first place, when it's 15 feet tall, we cannot require a 15-foot wall. So we cap it at 6 feet with the idea when the equipment exceeds 6 feet in height, coniferous trees must be used to provide additional screening. Loading areas must be screened as required by an existing section we have in our code that is actually stricter than what the Northeast District standards are. So we just recommend relying on this section of code, 1060.060, and kind of simplifying it there, but also requiring the higher standard for screening. And then utility service structures must be screened from off-site views, utilizing a double row of landscaping, a privacy fence or wall that is the same height as the structure it is screening, or 6 feet, whichever is less.
And again, chain link fence with slats will not be accepted. One last small change is within our landscaping standards. Someone provided their professional opinion that the use of a full complement of suggested that an applicant would have to provide one of, or at least one of each type of category for landscaping. So, some overstory, some ornamental, some evergreen, some shrubbery. And so now staff is recommending the use of a mix of to make it clear that we want to see a mix and it should be complementary, but it doesn't necessarily need to be something from each category. It could be a mix that makes sense for the site. So the recommendation at this time is to open the public hearing, and staff recommends approval of the draft ordinance and draft resolution approving findings of fact.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll open the public hearing. You guys have anything else to say? No? Do we have anyone online?
No one that would participate in the public hearing, no. And I will say that Steve hates our Northeast District Design Program.
Well, in that case, I will make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second.
Take a vote. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed? The public hearing has been closed. Discussion, I would like to start on this. As I've shared before, and I'm not going to rehash it all tonight, I think that we added 22 pages of code without very careful consideration of each material point. Here we are, less than 6 months later, rewriting it, and rewriting it primarily for the benefit of the city's own applications. Staff states that as to the overhead doors, staff believes this requirement is doable and makes sense for large properties guided for industrial, business park, and mixed use, as these parcels will have space to orient overhead doors internally. However, smaller sites along county roads will likely need to request a variance from this requirement. I think that if we move to a reasonableness standard, it will become too squishy. Can I use that here? Squishy.
Yes.
Because applicants, where this becomes an issue, will invariably state that it is unreasonable. There will be no facts to rebut that assertion, and it's up to the city to decide whether the answer is satisfactory with only one side of the story. It's just the way the application process is. It seems like we are taking a tried and true standard, the variance requirement, and supplanting with a shorter hurdle that completely guts the entire purpose of the ordinance in the first place. I think that the language should be kept as is as to garage doors. For the screening requirement, I would vote to recommend the change so that landscaping can be used to screen. Not only is this consistent with other areas of our code, it is also, I think, it also, I think, has a higher potential to be better looking. I would jettison the part that allows the fence screening to be the same height as the appliance. I don't think that does us any good. For that, we could remove the reference to fencing altogether or require fencing to be at least 4 to 6 feet. Those are my comments.
I have I'm in support of the changes to the language. I think I understand that there's a concern that in changing the language regarding garage doors, it would become too vague. And I feel this is one where, right, like I'm constantly in amazement at the Constitution. I just am, because the language both permits and prohibits. And I feel like we can, either way that we could go, on this one could be more restrictive or too flexible. And I feel like it's all just an opportunity where we have to step into trust that staff is going to do their due diligence to since the burden is on staff to determine the reasonableness rather than the applicant. I think that that's just a time when we're going to have to either accept that we'll be getting variance requests as Northeast development continues, or we would have to trust that staff would do their due diligence in supporting the reasonableness or unreasonableness of that fitting on that particular application. So all that to say, I don't have strong feelings one way or the other on changing the language of the garage doors. If staff feels like it would be a smoothing out of the process, creating less hurdles without being taken advantage of, like, I would be willing to accept that staff deals with that far more regularly and would speak to that.
May I?
Fair, yeah.
Reasonable to whom?
To the city was what the
So it's,
language was.
Which is,
Well, can they reasonably orient their site? If they can't, so I'm trying to think of an example right now, but for us to have reasonably, there was no way for us to have reasonably oriented the water treatment plant. And that would be the significant contemplation. We would have to do the same thing for a variance standard, but as you said, it's best practice when you know that your code is going to require variances to fix your code. That's just a best practice in planning. And so trying to add some flexibility for that built into the code is just proper planning. Additionally, it would allow for less hurdles. It would allow for one less application fee, one less application escrow. So when it's a small site already, and it might be a small property owner, a small business owner, that does reduce a significant hurdle. So I think that having someone to be able to come in under a straight plat, under a straight application without having to do an additional variance does smooth out the process. So that's where staff's coming from, but we can definitely forward a recommendation to not include that part. And with it sounds like there may be some support for landscaping, so we can definitely forward whatever recommendation that you guys come out with tonight.
Based on that and the fact that there is a separate application fee for it, and the fact that it does seem to be better, I understand your frustration, because I understand that you are not in support of the adoption necessarily of all of those pages of code, and it is disheartening that here we are just figuring out that the implementation isn't quite working. But I also feel like we have a responsibility that when an issue arises because it isn't working, that we need to fix it. And so I would be in support of passing all of the changes that staff has proposed tonight.
and I'm just curious, is there any connection with this stuff we were talking about with the Corcoran Business Park, loading docks, and the modification, because this is northeast, and will we have these giant, I can't remember how that's all zoned, I mean, could we potentially have some giant, like, yep, I'm gonna build here, and I wanna build a giant building like this, and now we don't, loading docks can be visible?
Well, the
or-
loading docks, the proposed language for the loading dock.
I guess it's reasonable, so.
Well, actually, we're requiring on the same, here, let me just pull this up for you. So for the loading areas, they must be screened as required by a section we already have that is more strict than what the Northeast District would have otherwise been, and that was the same standard that we reviewed Corcoran Farms against, correct?
The loading dock section is different, I think it's the previous slide.
Oh.
Yeah, that's screening.
I apologize.
That's why I wasn't sure
I
the
apologize.
connection of.
I misunderstood. I thought we were talking about the loading areas. So the loading docks.
That's tied to the overhead doors section.
Yeah, because I know we're talking about overhead doors, that part, but this also includes loading docks. That's why I was just like,
Yeah. Yeah, I apologize. I misunderstood. I thought we were talking about, I apologize. So no loading docks or overhead doors shall be visible from county roads. So so let's say Corcoran Farms moved to an industrial parcel. Those industrial parcels are the parcels this was written for.
Yeah.
And they would be required to do internal overhead doors when you're talking about multiple buildings from a plat from an 80-acre parcel or bigger. What this would be targeted to is for your much smaller parcels, most likely less than 10 acres that have no way to, it might be for a gas station on a 4-acre parcel who has a car wash, and the surrounding properties are residential and it's on a county road. There's no way for them to comply. That would be what this is for.
Right.
As far as big parcels that are coming in for a business park, they would be expected to internally orient the overhead doors.
Unless there's a gas line running down, it's just really, it's not reasonable. I mean, this is a slippery slope you're talking about a little bit,
Well, I'm just saying, I mean, the language, if you look, is clear. No loading docks or overhead doors shall be visible from county roads or residential property. We accepted this, we just added this, and now here we are in just over, what, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is. Now we're taking that very easy to understand single sentence, sometimes less is more, and we turn it into half of a brochure that just comes down to, well, now we're just gonna orient it away wherever it's possible, otherwise whatever. And I just think that this is wrong.
I mean, I see your point, that it's the one is very clear. Yes, we've hit 2 instances, both city ones, where we did have to submit variances. In the end, was no big deal, we did it, we approved them.
Well, and the thing is, again, wherever reasonable, I'll tell you what, so I'm building a great big loading dock, okay? And I want my doors this way. I'm just gonna come in here and say, look, it's not reasonable. And yes, I have confidence in staff, but what I am saying is now it is subjective, okay? Now it's like, well, whatever's reasonable. Well, what is reasonable? That first sentence, that's very clear, and you don't need interpretation as to what that means.
But it's too restrictive and it's not working.
Exactly.
It's not working for the city who accepted money in order to add this very language to our city's code.
Sure, but
we made our bed and we should follow our own rules.
Okay, but it's not working, so if you do not like what is proposed, do you have other language to suggest that would would allow such things as the water tower to work on smaller plats that is not as restrictive? Do you have a suggestion to meet in the middle? Because we can't go back because it's not working. The code, if we stay with it.
Why isn't it working?
Well, we may not have any more of
this. This has only been our code for
No, we
60
will.
days.
There are several properties along the
That would
county roads
that would become
that are
problematic.
going to be smaller, there could be a problem, yes.
So you could keep it as short, and you could just change it. No loading docks or overhead doors shall be visible from county roads, and then put your period there, and then you've solved the problem. Now they can face residential properties, and it's still just short and clear. But I feel like the second one allows more possibilities that actually benefit surrounding areas, even though it does, I understand it feels less vague. But,
well, the bottom one is very vague.
so then if you were going to make a suggestion, since the first one is currently not working, what would you recommend?
I made my recommendation, and that's to keep the current language written as is. That's my recommendation.
Okay. Well, I would make a
And using the variance process is what you're
Using
saying.
the variance process.
It's a separate, well, I understand,
Why
and
can't
staff
they apply
said
for
the
a
same
variance?
thing.
We see variances every time we come here.
We do,
What's
but
one more?
to stick it to recognize an error that then says, well, we just need to stick with it, that requires additional financial contributions by applicants, feels like to me that we're just not willing to humbly say we made a mistake and we're gonna fix it. So I would be willing to make a motion to pass the resolution. Let me get the proper language. That would allow a change to the text of, do I have to say that whole thing?
So you could, here, let me get to, so it's the draft ordinance and draft resolution approving findings of fact.
That's what, I would make a motion to approve the draft ordinance and the draft resolution with findings of fact.
Do we have a second?
I'm thinking about it. I will second it.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Nay. Slippery slope.
I know.
Planning project update?
Yeah, so no action is necessarily needed right here, but if anyone had any questions, I believe it was emailed out to you, I don't know. I think there may have been either it was the city council report or the planning project update that some reason didn't make it to the packet. So, but any questions on upcoming projects, please let me know.
Okay, thank you. Council Varenkamp?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions or updates
If
or?
you guys have questions of what's happened in the past and those kind of things, we're getting busy. I just haven't seen a lot yet. Our staff keeps telling us it's gonna be busy, crazy and stuff, and if I had something to give you, I would. A lot of the information that is happening and stuff is in Natalie's report as far as all of the things we've done in the past and stuff. But if you got specific questions, you guys have usually had specific. Thank you for letting me talk tonight about the water tower. My feelings on that, I would have rather have gone with that one on site on Bellwether. It was planned, it was whatever. Again, the cost to take a water tower and make it a reservoir, to turn in the pumps, to get the pressure, tremendous amount of maintenance costs, and it was probably a bad decision. But to elevate it, again, I would have rather had an elevated water tower at that existing site right next to the well. We still would have to put the water treatment plant in a different place, and I think that was on the 116 area and stuff. So pipe out from the well to the treatment and back to the tower. It just creates all kinds of things, but again, the neighborhood pushed and council and mayor decided to find a different site. But I won't forget that site as long as I'm on the council. That will be an option in the future.
Thank you, and thank you for taking the time to be with us tonight.
You guys, if I may, again, I've always said it, tremendous amount of mindset put towards all of these things. Thank you much, staff. Great information in front of you guys, and your openness, honesty, and those kind of things are good to hear.
Well,
you guys put a lot of time in, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, we appreciate your very kind comments. Since you opened that door, may I ask you a question?
Please, any question.
So, and, you know, I'm very proud of my colleagues and the preparation that they put into projects. And I guess my question is, I would like to know if the council, if they do not accept a recommendation from this commission, meaning that if they go in a different direction than what we have recommended, I would ask that we receive from council some reasoning as to why they did not go with our decisions, because I think
it was something that I always wondered, but I would spend time coming to the council meeting and listening to the reason and stuff. Not everybody can do that. Not everybody is crazy as me, but I think some type of explanation and stuff, I'll bring that up.
I would appreciate that because I know that my colleagues spend a lot of time preparing for these meetings. As you know, they're not paid $1. They're here volunteering their time, and they do
We could
a
recommend-
very good job.
I can make a recommendation on $1 pay.
No,
That would help.
no, but my point is, when.
I got $7 in my pocket, I'm just,
My point is, if this commission is putting in that kind of legwork, and if the city council ignores our recommendation, I would like to know why.
Could we get that included as part of the notes, maybe, as part of the?
I'd very much respect that. The council puts in tremendous hours too, the Corcoran Farms, that subject, what do I want to say, Kendra? I don't even know what I want to say.
That proposal, that application.
The proposal came to us. We had no idea, I had no idea the size, I had no idea of all of those things. I knew that there would be some, we want this. I think that was asked, they're asking for everything they can get, and it'll be one of those things that it's gonna be, do we want it that big, do we want it looking like that? Me personally, that's not what I was thinking it was gonna end up being. It is a difficult thing. I spoke with the neighborhood and stuff like that and told them they didn't hear that for that rezoning back in 2017, 18, I think there was 20-plus meetings for the neighborhood, and we never got the notice, we never got that. I said straight back to them, a lot of residents, a lot of people, that is what they always say. They got something from the city, open it up, I don't care. And then all of a sudden, something like that comes. But to your point, our reply back on why we decided different than what the recommendation was, I think that's a very respectful request. And
Thank you.
I think it's something we can do.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because as I hope you've seen in your attendance of our meetings, we have lively, passionate debates here. But as I said earlier, great minds can agree to disagree.
Yes, sir.
And I just think that when you have smart people putting a lot of time into something and making thoughtful recommendations, I know that I heard, some discussion, and our research was ignored because someone was not cutting down a few trees. And I don't get it. And I want to know that if I put work into something, I want it considered, other than someone just say, well, the trees, this just feels right. Well, we should be basing our decisions on the law, on the code. I do.
I'd love to give you input.
I'm not going to discuss that in a public forum, but I'm happy to talk to you about it outside afterward.
Yeah.
But I just think, if I ground one of my kids, they're going to ask me why. And I think I need to explain them, because otherwise they're not going to learn anything. And we're not going to learn anything if we're just ignored and then not told why.
I have seen a tremendous amount of evolution in the planning commission from when I was on it, while I was on it, change out all of these things, and then council changing too. I've seen an evolution that it's more, we listen more, we spend more time on the subjects than I think it has been in the past. Administrative folks might not like how much we all push back and question and those kind of things, but they're still here. As long as we're respectful, open, and honest, and give good input, that's the main thing. We're not always going to agree. But you are absolutely right. The amount of time spent is crazy. I did it when I was there. I still do it. I go out, talk to even more people, on the council and stuff, listen to the concerns and stuff. But you guys need answers back.
Well,
why?
I acknowledge, city council, you have the discretion, okay? You're the elected officials.
Yep.
And I get that. I just want to know how.
I love it.
How.
We'll talk after this for a few minutes too.
So Okay.
Understood?
All right, thank you.
We'll ask for it.
Thank you, I appreciate
You're
that.
welcome.
Do any of my colleagues have anything that you would like to add or discuss under other business?
No, contained in the packet was not the schedule of our liaison to the council meetings, but I have
Oh, I
that.
thought it was.
Oh, maybe I just don't have it. I mean, it had it in the online.
It's on the back page of the,
There you go. Never mind. I stand corrected. So I was just gonna say, I know I'm on for next week. Beyond that, I don't know.
I think we have a request to change.
Yes, so Commissioner Horn right now is on for October 27th, which is the meeting where all of our planning items tonight are going to go. Since he's not here tonight, he was wondering if anyone else would have availability to switch with him. If not, that's totally fine. He will take it, but he just thinks that it might be better if someone a little more involved in the discussion will be there. And you can be online, of course.
You can put me down as a maybe. I need to clear one item from my calendar, but if I can do that, I will know by Monday. I hope that's not too late.
No, that's perfect.
So I will reach out to you with a yes or no on Monday.
Perfect.
And then is there a reason Shulak is in red with an M?
Monday night meeting.
Oh, perfect. All
Thanksgiving,
right.
Thanksgiving.
Wait.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
That's Thursday, yeah.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
I got you.
He's in trouble, that's why.
Okay. I think that's it.
I think so.
Is that it?
Adjournment.
Is there anything else that anyone would like to add?
I would make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
And I will third it. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Look at you two hanging.
Excellent,
on.
thank
Hanging
you.
tight all the way to the end.
Now.
Thanks, guys.
Recording stopped.
Credit where credit's due. This would have been